So my name is Vickie Mathews. I'm a Senior Vice President at Cecil Associates, which is a full-service fundraising agency that serves nonprofits all across the country. I have the pleasure of working with the Kansas Food Bank, so I do some work here. That's how I got to know the Sunflower Foundation. So I also understand when you all might be asking for support from Sunflower. I'm in the exact same boat, and what a great partner they are for all of us to rely on. So I've been a BCA for about 10 years, and I oversee all of our major gift and capital and donor research work. Before that, I worked at a really small museum in Savannah, Georgia, whose mission was to tell the story of the mighty 8th Air Force. And then before that, I spent 6 or 7 years working on a national project to build a brand new national park. So I've been doing this work for nearly 20 years and have learned a lot along the way. And that's what the Sunflower Foundation asked me to do, is to come and share with you what I have learned through that journey and some of the best practices. So that's what we'll be doing together today. I would love for this to be a collaborative conversation. I don't have all of the answers, but I know that you all can learn from each other. That's one of the reasons that you come to a learning collaborative like this. So if you have something to contribute to the conversation, please just raise your hand. Don't wait until the end. Just let's all learn from each other. Is there anything that's on anyone's mind for today so that I can make sure that I can address it? Anything you'd like? How to raise money. I think you're in the right place. So we can get started with this. All right, so I found this image recently, and I felt that it really stood out to me. And as fundraisers, we know that fundraising is not simply about money. It's not as crass as that. It's about a relationship that you have with the donor. What this shows us is that money is the byproduct of the fundraising work that we all do. And fundraising is made up of all of these things: impact, relationships, volunteering, events, innovation. And when I look at this as a fundraiser, I'm really excited because these are tools that I can bring to the conversations that I'm having with donors. If I know what makes them tick, if I know what they're interested in, I can tailor my conversation to them. And so I love that I'm not there just to talk about money, that I'm there to talk about all of these things. And so this is a great place to kind of start and get us all in the right mindset for this conversation, that fundraising is not transactional. We all want to be building a long-term sustainable organization. We cannot do that if we simply look at our donors as checkbooks. You know that when I was at Flight 93, I was the one that answered all of the phones. I did all the database entry. And I once had a major donor, call me up, and she felt that she hadn't been stewarded the way that she wanted to. And she said, "Well, do you just think that I'm a checkbook?" Oh my gosh, I was devastated. I wanted to crawl under my desk and die. And so it is my goal to make sure that you don't get one of those calls. So this is going to be the framework for my presentation today. This is the donor cultivation life cycle. Is anyone in this room familiar with the donor pyramid? No, good, because it's garbage. The donor pyramid is transactional. It's a numbers game. It just shows you need a bunch of donors at the bottom, a few donors in the middle, and one or two donors at the top. And it treats donors as numbers, not as relationships to your organization. And so I feel that this is a much better framework to do our jobs well. This is also something that is scalable. This is something that you can use whether you're talking to a $100 donor or a $1 million donor. This can be scaled for campaigns, for annual funds, for programs, everything. And so it starts with identification of potential donors and leaders, and then you move over into qualification, which is where you determine if the organization or individual is a viable prospect. That's when we really start to hone in on where do we want to spend our time? What relationships do we feel we really should be investing in? And then you move into the cultivation phase, where you're moving the prospect towards an actual solicitation. When we work with our clients, we tell them that, if you've gotten to the cultivation part, then you have a gift. It's just a matter of when and how much. So use that as some inspiration. I've got your back. If you get to that point, you're going in the right direction. You're doing all the right things. The next step is solicitation, where you ask for a gift of a specific amount to a specific initiative. That is incredibly important. You need to be very clear with your donors, because if you've done all of the right steps in the first 3 phases, you've understood what makes them tick as a donor, what inspires them. And that helps you to put together a thoughtful ask that they simply can't say no to, because you know it's going to spark joy for them. And then stewardship. This is where most of us spend our time with our donors. It's where you update, thank, recognize them, tell them what impact their gift had. We spend a lot of time in this stewardship phase. Now, this is just one gift cycle. In the lifetime of a donor, you will go over this over and over and over again. And this is how that happens. This is a donor life cycle. This shows you the entire lifespan that you could have with your donor. And going from every step, first to second year active, that's a rotation of that cultivation cycle. The first gift is when they kind of raise their hand and say, I think I might want to be part of this. The second gift is a very important benchmark to reach, because it's called converting a donor. Converting a donor is a difficult thing to do. Think about if you were in this work during COVID, think about how many new people just flooded philanthropy at that time. Have they come back? A lot of them haven't, because it was topical. It was what was on their mind at the time, but they were not in it for the long haul. Once a donor gives for their second active year, that's when you can start to see trends. When do they like to give? How do they like to give? Those are very important things to pay attention to with your donors, because then you'll hopefully start to see a pattern in multi-year active. That's a great time to grow the relationship with them. If you put them in a moves management process, if you want to get them as a monthly donor, all of that happens in this multi-year active phase. And then some donors, not every donor, can move into major or stretch giving, and that's okay. Not every donor can make a 6-figure gift. That's fine. The gift that they've made to you is significant to them. It means something to them. But for some donors, they're able to move into major or stretch giving, and then ultimate giving, I would equate to planned giving. So I wanted to show you 2 donor examples of this donor life cycle. This is donor A. This is a client of ours that acquired a new donor in 2020 through acquisition. Are you all familiar with that phrase, acquisition? So we basically, and my agency does other things than capital work. We do direct response and digital and newsletters and things like that. So we purchased her and thousands of others' names off of a list and basically sent a cold call letter to her, not knowing a single thing about, we knew what list she came off of, but that was about it. We didn't know anything about her. And she decided to send in a 5-figure gift. And it doesn't matter what size organization any of us work for, a 5-figure unsolicited first-time gift is going to catch everyone's attention. This organization did all of the right things. They elevated it to their CEO to ask him to make a personal thank you. They reached out to her and got to know her better. And they understood her story. We could spend a lot of time talking about this, but I have been running over on every single one of these presentations. So if you would like to talk about it, see me afterwards. But they got to know her. And because they were in a capital campaign at the time, that's how I know about this. I was supporting them in that effort. They told her about the organization and that a capital campaign was going on. She then skipped, let me go this way. She skipped second gift, second year active, multi-year active. She went all the way to major or stretch giving and made a 7-figure gift to this organization. This is an outlier. This is like, I'm just stick with me. I'm giving you really, really actionable things in this presentation, but I want you to see that this is the right place at the right time. And this organization invested in this individual in an authentic way. They built a relationship. That is the only way that something like this happens. And so she now is a very generous annual donor because she wants to know that her investment in the capital campaign is being cared for and taken care of properly. Here's another donor example from another client of ours. So this particular donor started giving in 2007 and immediately converted to a second gift in the same year and just got into a regular rhythm with them. This is a $25 donor. Most of her gifts were in the $25, $50 range. But you can see that they had a very long relationship with her. In this multi-year active phase, she decided that she wanted to make a monthly gift to them. And I'm pointing that out because I want to remind all of you that if you have a monthly giving program, pay attention to who those donors are. Because this donor, she unfortunately passed away in 2021, but there's an ultimate giving entered in 2022 because they didn't know that she named them in her will. And a planned gift showed up one day for 6 figures. So there's a lot to learn here that you should not overlook. Those sweet $25 donors that give to you over and over and over again, those are all very important indicators of the relationship that you've built with them. So let's talk about each of these steps of the cultivation cycle. The first is identification. As I mentioned earlier, acquisition is one way to bring in new donors. Targeted advertising is another way to do that. In our office, our digital team does banner ads because it's really terrifying how much data we can all access on each other. And so if we wanted to, we can target geographic area, and a few other indicators, and we can run banner ads, that show up at the top of your search engine or on the side to drive people to a website. Events. So when I say events, don't hear gala, don't hear expensive, time-consuming, takes every single resource we have. It's a different kind of event that I would recommend to you. Many of our clients host a predictable, happens every month event. So let's say it's the second Wednesday of every month. Someone is going to be there to give a tour and talk about the organization and maybe provide, lunch or breakfast or something. That way, donors, leaders of the organization, staff, members of the community know that they can always bring someone on that day at that time, and they're not getting a pitch for a donation. They are just being introduced to the organization, and someone is sharing with them how they could get engaged. You should also be thinking about your leaders as a source for identifying new donors. Your board members, affinity groups, advisory councils, ask them, who do you know that might be interested in our mission? And they can bring them to that event every second Wednesday, or they can bring them in some other way. And prospecting. So I will talk about some things that you can subscribe to, but I also don't want to tell you a bunch of things that are just going to continue to drain your resources. You can do free prospecting with publicly available information. We like to take a look at the Chamber of Commerce list to see who's on that. We like to look at community economic development organizations. I also am not at all above looking at county property records. And it's not just to find who owns the biggest house in town, it's to see who owns property. Even when I feel that I know a community, I am surprised when I see the organizations and companies that own property in that area that I just never would have realized before. That helps me to kind of identify some new prospects that I might like to go talk to. For tools that you could use for identification, you absolutely need a clear mission and clear goals for your organization, because that helps you to identify who is your target audience, who are the people that you're looking for. If you don't know what your end goal is, you don't know who you're trying to talk to. Having a strong brand is also an important aspect of this, making sure that people understand from your branding who you are and what you do. Like, did they clearly understand that? That's an important piece here as well. You can use research tools. These are the subscription-based things. iWave and Foundation Directory are the tools that we use in our office, and I love both of them. I could talk about them quite a bit, but they are subscription-based, so not everybody can sustain subscriptions like that. Strategic vendor partners, if you are in the position of being able to have a digital vendor or direct response vendor, you might want to think about that. And having a multi-channel presence, making sure that every avenue that you can communicate to somebody, you have consistent messaging over and over again. This is an example of that seven-figure donor that I told you about. This is how it got accelerated through the development department. So I just want you to see how this all happened. So when she made her gift down here, this is where it started. The development director emailed the CEO and said, will you please send a personal thank you to this person? Then he emailed their development coordinator and said, can you please do a little bit of research and help us understand who this person is? Once they figured that out, they emailed our team over here, because remember, we were in a capital campaign, so they sent it over to us to use our research resources to make sure that we really understood who we were talking to and how we could have a thoughtful conversation with her. And this is an example of one of our really fantastic clients who does that. In this case, it's a Wednesday lunch. Once a month, they host a lunch called Pathway to Possibilities. And it's very clear here. This is an inspiring hour-long event, so they set the parameters. We'll share how you can become a vital advocate, empowering women and their children to heal and rebuild their lives. There's not a single ask in there for a gift. It's really just creating awareness. So onto the qualification step. This is where you'll want to invest a little more time in research. Now, if you can't get a subscription to iWave or Foundation Directory, I have some ideas for you. So you can, we talked about property records. 990s for private foundations are publicly available and free online through Charity Engine and, gosh, there's another one. I keep forgetting the name all week. There are, not Charity Engine, it's Charity Navigator. Those, ProPublica, those are sources where you can access 990s for free. So if they have a family foundation, you can get that information through that. You can also look at annual reports for companies and corporate websites where you would learn information about what drives their philanthropy or their CSR priorities. We also, in our office, have just gotten really good at Googling people because we have to rely on publicly available information. We do not have insight into anything that we shouldn't have any insight into. And so, we just use the quotation marks in Google a lot. Peer insights is another great way to include your leaders in this process. If a board member has brought a name to you and told you, you should get to know this person, ask them, is this the right time to go to them? How should we approach them? Would you like to be part of that process? Make sure you're using their insights. Look at past donor activity. Take a look at who are your current donors who are starting to increase over time their commitment to you. Those might be people that you want to talk to. What you're really trying to identify in this phase is ability, affinity, and access. If you have those three things, you are set up well for a successful solicitation. Ability just means their financial capacity to make a gift. Affinity is how much they align with your mission. So your current donors have already identified that they have an affinity with your organization. And access, can you get a meeting with them? If you don't have access, then circulate those names through any network that you have to see if you can find anyone that can help you get an introduction or a meeting with them. And the discovery meeting. This is an area that I'll spend the most time with you because it is the most important step in this process. If you don't take anything else away from our time together, please take away the importance of this step. During a discovery meeting, that is when you go in and you are not making an ask at all. You are trying to learn or discover what your donor is looking for. This is where you're looking for where their philanthropic priorities and your mission align. And then you want to dig in to where that alignment is. So when you go into a meeting like that, you want to make sure that you're prepared with really thoughtful questions. And so some of the questions that we often ask are, if we don't know exactly what organizations they support, but they know that the family is philanthropic, we'll say, what are some of the causes that you and your family most enjoy supporting? And you would be surprised how much information you would get from asking some of those really well thought questions. If you see their name somewhere else or a news article that they've made a big gift to another organization, again, that's publicly available information. And it's as simple as asking, I noticed that you made a large gift to the Children's Hospital. That is just so incredible. Can you tell me more about your relationship with that organization? And they will share with you what influenced that, and you can, through that process, try to figure out if you are the type of organization that they would make a similar commitment to. Brad and I were once in a discovery meeting, and it was actually a feasibility study, and our client told us, well, they gave $1 million to this organization down the street. They should give us $1 million. And we said, okay, well, we'll go in and ask. So we went into the meeting, and we said, we've noticed that you make a lot of gifts. You've had a long history with this other organization down the road. Can you tell us about that? And they said, oh, yes, our family has been involved with them for generations. We've all been on the board. It's our mom's passion project. They get gifts that no one else is going to get. You will not get a gift of that size, but you could get a gift of this size. And then we asked how we should do it and what's the timing and what's the process, and we got that gift. And that is okay. We can't all go in and all get the biggest gifts ever. But when they tell us how to be successful, we should listen to them. That's how we build the relationship with that donor, because we're being really good listeners and we're being curious about what drives them as philanthropists. Let's see. So some of the tools for the qualification phase, again, iWave Foundation Directory. Make sure that you are telling a compelling story in the right tone. And what I mean is that when you're talking, if you're going to send a proposal to the Sunflower Foundation, you're going to talk about your organization differently than in your newsletter, right? It's the same message, but it's a different tone. So make sure that you are thinking about your audience. Way back in the day, fundraising messaging was about need. I need a truck. I need to make payroll. I need a freezer. I need this. That's transactional. That's not inspiring somebody. Then it started to kind of turn to donor-centric. That's where I live most of the time. When I'm talking to major donors, I am trying to tell them, this is the impact that your gift could make in our community. This is what you could see from your philanthropy. There's some other messaging, though, that are more appropriate for other audiences and are starting to become much more commonplace. Community-centric fundraising is a tone that we use in a lot of our newsletters in our office. What does this organization mean to the community? What is the impact that we are bringing to everyone, not just donors, not just clients? Our work is making our community a better place. And then there's also a gentleman named Trabian Shorters has started talking a lot about asset framing. So going back to Nexus, they're a recovery organization that supports women and children as they're dealing with substance use disorder. And we don't want to talk about those women as, oh my gosh, like they have all of these issues and what's going to happen with their kids. We want to talk about they're getting the help that they need. And they have a place where they can take their children with them. And that family can stay together. It's just flipping the narrative because that feels a lot better to say than, oh my gosh, there's all these hungry kids in North Texas or in Kansas or whatever. So think about the right tone for the audience that you are talking to. Also think about the supporting materials. When you go into donor meetings, do you ever feel like, oh man, I wish I had this thing? If you say that to yourself, make that thing and make it desktop published. Do not print 3,000 glossy brochures. They're going to sit in the corner, they're not going to get used, and they're going to be out of date in at best 6 months, if not the next day. We don't do any publications like that. On the capital campaign side, we do everything desktop published because we need to be able to change it and make sure that it's accurate whenever we're sharing it with any donor. We also want to make sure that we're customizing our communications as much as possible. So imagine if you had a really awesome template where you could go into any donor and tell them, thank you, this is your impact on our organization. And that document reflected their relationship and their relationship only. Think about some of those things. Now, of course, it needs to look professional. It should be beautiful, but it doesn't have to be something that you spend a ton of time and money printing a bunch of things that actually don't apply to anybody. This is just a quick example of how a discovery conversation goes incredibly well. This was the North Texas Food Bank. We helped them on their capital campaign, and we went into Alliance Data, which is a company in North Texas that was just growing tremendously at the time. They couldn't even, like, they were constantly moving out of offices because they just kept growing out of everything. We went into a meeting with them, and because we did our research, we thought we were going to ask them for $1 million gift. And when we went in, we asked, oh, this is a question that I didn't tell you, I should have. In the discovery phase, when you're talking to a company, you should ask them if they are influenced by HR or PR decisions. If they're influenced by PR, they want like their name in this room. You know, they want a story about them. They want to be in social media. Like they want the picture with the big check like this. That's what they're looking for. If they're looking for HR, they're looking for ways to engage their associates. And a lot of times, engaging associates is the fastest way to a successful corporate solicitation because they want their associates to be the ones to find value in what they as a company are supporting. So we went into Alliance Data and they said, well, we're really right now really focused on hiring people. We're growing so fast, it's hard to hire and retain talent. And so we actually want our name in your volunteer center because we want everyone, when they take a photo, we want to be in the background so that everybody sees our company and they know who we are. So we said, okay, that's great. It's not going to be $1 million gift. It's going to be a $2.5 million gift for this volunteer center. And they said, okay, let's figure out how to make that happen. Now, there were a lot of components to this gift, but that conversation, because we were curious and we were good listeners, we heard what they were looking for. We could not have known that going into that meeting. There's no way we could have known. And so at the end of the day, Alliance Data ended up making their largest gift ever in the history of their company. And the North Texas Food Bank secured the largest corporate gift at that time that their organization had ever received. That was all because we were good listeners. Now, I know that this is a lot of zeros. I just find inspiration in this story. This is an outlier for sure, but the principles are the things that are the most important to keep from this story. Those are very scalable. And this is not just a picture of a cute puppy. This is an example of a donor survey. This is something that is so easy to do. There's so many free resources to do online surveys. You don't have to pay for them at all. And if you send 4 or 5 real easy questions to your donors, it can help you to understand how they want to interact with your organization. And if they want to talk to someone, this is a way for them to communicate that with you. Okay, the cultivation stage. So we've talked a lot about engaging with your donor, your volunteer leaders who are supporting you. Including them in the cultivation stage is really important if they're willing to. If they're terrified of the fundraising process, don't bring them to the meeting. It's going to derail it. It's not going to come out well. But if they're willing to join a staff member for a meeting, a volunteer can come into a meeting with a peer of theirs. It could be a friend, it could be a business colleague, whoever it is. They can come in and they can say, this project or this organization is important to me and my family. We have chosen to support it. Will you join me? Those are incredibly powerful words that none of us can say. They can play a role in your meetings that you simply cannot, and they're incredible additions to these conversations. During the cultivation phase, it's a great time to ask someone if they'd like to come in for a tour. It's just a nice excuse to reach out if the conversation's gone stale. Providing volunteer opportunities, as I mentioned, with corporations, and giving them some thoughtful touch points and updates. These should be really simple. It could be a news article that reminds you of a conversation you had with them and you just want to send it along. It could be a photo of something really cool that happened at your agency. It could be a Valentine's card. We have the animal rescue that I just showed you. They send Valentine's cards to their donors. And that stood out so much that I was listening to a panel discussion one day at a conference, and one of their foundation donors used them as an example of how to stand out and be authentic in the stewardship process. At this time, having a menu of opportunities is sometimes helpful in this conversation. If the donor has not already helped you to really pinpoint what it is that they want to do, giving them something to react to so that you get a more thoughtful solicitation that you're going to make to them. Because remember, we want to make a specific ask for a specific purpose. So you don't need a menu of opportunities for everyone, but for some of them, you do need that. This is an example of a virtual event that some of our clients do. Now, this is a tool that can be used throughout. This could be in the identification phase, in the cultivation phase, in the stewardship phase. So these are things that could be repeated multiple times. This is a food bank, so it's called Food for Thought. They host it every month. Sometimes I join in on these because I just want to learn what they have going on. And they cover a different topic every month, and they bring their own staff in who are experts in that topic, and they have a conversation with the people who are participating. There's no cost. It's not limited to a specific audience. This is open to anyone that happens to come across this link. So this is another great idea to think about. In the solicitation step, make sure you're making a specific ask for a specific purpose and make it in a thoughtful way. What I mean by that is we're all familiar with how detailed foundation proposals are. It's a very formal process, but not every donor wants that. Some donors might want a quick 2-page executive summary kind of request. Some may not even want a request. So what we do is we decide ahead of time what's the thing that we would like to be prepared with and just have it in our back pocket. So we'll sometimes make sure that we have that executive summary request in the folder that we bring to the meeting. And if it comes up, we can pass it along, or we can ask the donor in the meeting, how would you like to receive this request? And if they say they want it and they're ready to take it then, we already have something for them. Or if we've prepared something that is maybe not exactly in line with the conversation, we say, can I send you that and follow up to this meeting right afterwards? I'd like for it to reflect the conversation that we just had. And multi-channel communication, just make sure that you are communicating with your donors through the right channels. So if you're talking to a $100 donor, you probably want to make sure that they are in your newsletter list and that they're getting your emails. But if you're talking to somebody about a large capital gift, you probably don't want to be distracting them with those other communications. So make sure that you're putting people into the right communication channels. For tools that you need, if you don't already have a database by this point, you would want a database. There's been a lot of chatter about those. Does anyone have any questions about what people are using or what works, what doesn't? How do you all feel about your databases? You hate them? Love them? Of course. Yeah, everybody hates them. Everybody does. So make sure that you are able to properly track all of these donor activities. You also may want to have a ways to give one pager. I'll talk about donor advised funds tomorrow because a lot of people don't understand that they can give through their donor advised fund. And so putting all of those ways to give on one sheet is sometimes really helpful for your donors. It takes the burden off of them to think through what are some of the things that I have available to me. So if they have stock, if you let them know that you're prepared to take stock or cryptocurrency or, a donor advised fund, that makes the transaction a little bit easier for them. Also make sure that you are updating your acknowledgement letters on some kind of cadence that feels right for you. In our world, for capital campaigns, we have 5 different letters that we use, and we only update them once a year because most capital donors are on an annual cycle. Your general operating or program donors, you're probably communicating, hopefully you're communicating with them more often. And so you want to make sure that they don't feel that they're just getting the same thing from you over and over again. I am very hesitant to let AI into any part of my fundraising process because I'm all about relationships, as you can see, but AI can write me a bunch of acknowledgement letters. That otherwise feels like you're just reinventing the wheel. I have to write the same letter for the 25th time. And so I really like using it for these acknowledgement letter updates. And then thank you videos. I want to show you an example. Earlier this summer, I heard a presentation from Rachel Muir. If you are not familiar with her, I would encourage you to check her out. She's a phenomenal speaker, very energetic, and she brings such great examples that I have boosted several things from her presentation. But I give her credit here. So if she asks you, her name is down here. So this is a donor acknowledgement video from a company called BombBomb. And so Rachel had recommended this to somebody, and this was an email where they said, I sent my first ever BombBomb video to someone who I've been trying to connect with for forever. She immediately wrote me back asking if she can buy a ticket to our upcoming gala fundraiser. So this is a way that you can kind of set yourself apart from others who are sending just standard acknowledgement letters that just get lost in the mail. And then this gentleman here says, I've donated to many causes, but only one thanked me with a personal video message. Now, BombBomb is definitely not the only software that provides this, but again, I want to give you some ideas to get you thinking about what feels like the right solution for you and your organization. This is also an example, again, from Rachel. I told you there were a lot of them. This is an example of an email that I love bringing to presentations like this because everyone in this room can do this. In fact, you can have your volunteers write emails like this. It's so simple. It's just got a photo of a child that participates in this program, and it says, thank you for your $25 gift that helps to ensure that students like Kelsey have access to high-quality outdoor education experiences. This feels a little different from, the letter that comes in the mail. It's more thoughtful. It connects you to an actual student that's participating in that program. And so I felt that this was just a really great example. All right, stewardship. As I mentioned earlier, this is where we spend a lot of our time with our donors. A schedule of communication and pipelines. So Many organizations have a lot of different ways that they communicate with donors. Make sure that you have a plan. When someone makes a gift, what's the relationship like that you want to cultivate with them? Sometimes this is equated to a moves management process, and I've got a little template that I created for a couple of organizations, and so if you would like to see that, if that's of interest to you, just email me and I'm happy to share it. We talked about thoughtful touch points and updates. Again, use those in your donor stewardship. Keep your organization at the top of your donor's mind. If you do it for one in the cultivation cycle, you can do it for another in the stewardship cycle. We've talked about events, the different kind of events that you can host just to keep people engaged in your organization. Let's see, welcome kit. So this is one example. This is just another virtual event example that one of our clients does. They have a different topic, and this is a very large organization that serves orphans and vulnerable children all around the world. And not only did I work for them, but I'm also a donor to them, and I can't keep up with what they're doing. And so it's great that if I wanted to find out what's going on in India, I can log in to this event and I can learn from the team that's actually there what's happening. This is a welcome postcard that I absolutely love. This also came from Rachel Muir's presentation, and when I saw it, I just felt that it was so smart. This is from a YMCA, and all it says is, thank you for making your first gift so that their firsts can happen. First time at summer camp, first time swimming at the pool, so even if you can't do a one-for-one exact match of this, how does this apply to your work? How can you learn something from this that might be able to be applied to your mission and help you to create something memorable as you're welcoming that first-time donor and trying to get that second-time conversion gift? Okay, and then the last thing I have in here are resources. These, with the exception of the Institute for Charitable Giving, these are all free, because I don't want to give you a bunch of things that you may not be able to actually act on or wish that you could. CFRE is first. I am a CFRE. It's a certified fundraising executive. I have been since 2018. So that means I have had to recertify twice. I've had to have 65 hours of continuing education credits for each of those cycles. I rely on CFRE a lot. There are free and on-demand resources on any topic in fundraising that you can go through and sign up for. Whether you're going through this certification or not, there's a ton of resources here. Donor Search is another one that I rely on a lot to get my hours in. They do webinars every single week on different topics. They bring in fantastic experts, and they're all free. The Institute of Charitable Giving, does anyone in this room know who Jerry Panis is? No? Jerry Panis is like the father of fundraising. He's like Panas. He's like the OG, Jerry Panis was. He started the Institute for Charitable Giving. Now, this is an organization that does seminars across the country. You do have to pay for them to participate, but it's a multi-day intensive experience. They've got a whole faculty that contributes to the content. I've gone to one of their trainings, but that is just if you're looking for the basic, like a really strong foundation in fundraising, you could get it from there. Amy Eisenstein is a consultant and speaker that I have a lot of respect for. I agree with like 99% of what she says, and she delivers it in a very friendly, easy to comprehend way. She has a ton of resources on her website. So that's a great source if you're looking to dig into anything in particular. Your local AFP chapter. AFP is the Association of Fundraising Professionals. I learned just in my last session that there are 3 chapters in Kansas. I'm from Texas, so I don't know some of those details, but there are 3 chapters. One is here in Topeka, one's in Wichita, and the other's in Kansas City. But AFP also provides a ton of resources. They are our advocates. Those are our people as fundraisers. If you're looking for a group like this, of people who are ready to walk alongside you in this journey, it's AFP. The next 3 are newer and less time tested, but are kind of at the top of my mind right now. The Fundraising is Funny podcast is fantastic. I listened to it when I flew in on Tuesday and had to drive from Kansas City. And so I listened to this on the way, and it doesn't feel at all like I'm listening to a podcast about work. It's very lighthearted and still has some learning in there and examples from people who have been fundraising for a very long time. The We Are for Good website, this is a relatively new organization. They are very forward thinking. This is like the next generation of fundraisers that are coming up through this organization. They've got a lot of great resources if that's what you're looking for. And then the Virtuous Responsive Nonprofit Summit. Virtuous is a new technology platform. They have a database, so if you're looking for something, that's another option you could think about. But they also have a ton of resources on their website. They hosted this summit earlier in the summer, and they have made all of those sessions available online. There's something like 36 hours worth of credits on there, and so there's just easy to get to. These are all linked in my presentation, and I believe that this presentation will be available to all of you from the Sunflower Foundation after this learning collaborative. But if you'd like to email me and receive it sooner, I'm more than happy to share it with you. So that is everything that I have for you today. We made it, you guys. What kind of questions do you all have? Yes, sir. Oh, wait for the mic. Yep.
If a small nonprofit was going to raise funds to hire a firm like yours to say, hey, I want to get guidance and walking through and setting this up, what does that typically look like? Kind of just the range of, hey, you need this amount to even approach an organization like mine to help set up just a system kind of deal, because I appreciate the information today, and it's kind of like, it's a fire hose. And I think if I try to take all the screen captures that I'm capturing back to my team, it would be too much.
Sure.
But I think if we had someone, a tutor along the way to say, you know what, your next step looks like this. Okay, you did that. Your next step looks like this.
Yes. Yeah.
Then I could do that, and just want to know, like, if I'm trying to go out to raise funds to get that kind of tutor, what should I be looking at?
So are you asking, how do you raise those funds, or how much does it cost? Second. Okay. The answer is it will vary wildly. There is a source to nonprofit consultants. I don't know it off the top of my head, but if you will see me after this and get my business card and we can exchange information, I will send it to you, because there is a place that you can go to access information on nonprofit consultants and fundraising consultants especially. There are a lot of small, like one-person shops that are kind of around and out there in the community that are oftentimes the best option for an organization like yours. If ours is still a relatively small agency. There are some really big ones out there, some really big ones in Kansas City, and that's not the right scale for you right now. And so let me see if I can find something on here for you, because some of them will charge like a monthly retainer and you get X number of hours. Some of them will just say, tell me what you need and it'll just be one fee. I mean, every consultant operates in a different way. So but it's also important to make sure that you are considering the type of relationship that you're looking for, and you find somebody that you click with, because that's a huge part of that arrangement. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Can you just talk a little bit more about like the discovery process and the meeting, the discovery meeting? So if donors are suggested by a board member or a volunteer or someone, you're not just like then cold calling that person and saying, this person told me to talk to you. Like, what kind of process would that look like? Would the person who suggested it be like, expect this call, or could go into a little bit more about how that relationship would just be started?
Sure. That is something that you should absolutely explore with the person who recommended that person to you. You want to use them as kind of your guide to figure out what is the right approach. What we do is we ask them, are you willing to make an introduction to us? Do you want to come to the meeting? Do you not want to come to the meeting? Because we can react to any scenario. And so we rely on them to tell us if that person, we've done it in every single possible way. There's been a time where our contact emailed the person we're trying to meet with without copying us and said, hey, this is what I'm involved in. Are you interested in learning more? If so, can I introduce you to the staff person who would be following up with them? Sometimes they say, oh, they don't mind at all. I saw him last night at, wherever, and they're expecting you to reach out to them. And so here's their information. I don't need to be copied, or I do need to be copied. Just ask all of those questions along the way. But when you ask for the meeting, be very clear in what it is that you're trying to accomplish. If you're vague and you just say, hey, I want to come talk to you about this organization, that is not the right ask for instance, a capital campaign. So you want to make sure that you're setting up the expectations so that they know exactly what they're saying yes to, what you're asking them to consider. It's the same principle if you're asking for a solicitation meeting as well. If you go in and just say, I want to come talk to you about our organization, they're not expecting you to say, will you please give $25,000? That will catch them off guard. So just, ask a lot of questions, be curious. Ask a lot of questions as you're getting up to that point so that you're confident that you're taking all of the right steps.
We are out of time. Everybody help me thank Vickie for that wonderful breakout session. She will be here tomorrow for Donor Advised Fund.